Good afternoon. I'm Rodney.
I'm Jamal.
It's Vince.
And we are
Under construction.
Recently, our Charlotte Hornets finished the week 1-1. Finished the season with a 39-43 record and missed the playoffs. We sadly had to depend on the Detroit Pistons to lose to the Memphis Grizzlies and the goddamn New York Knicks. Come on, what were we thinking?
See, and let me tell you how tough it is being a Hornets fan. When we've been doing this show the last couple of weeks, Rodney always asks, "So, fellas, how was your weekend?" We couldn't even get that today.
No.
His mind so he couldn't even ask us how our weekend is.
Because the answer's already there.
It's already. Well. Aside from the Hornets, I had an excellent weekend. I was in Cancun. I was in the sun, getting bug bites, kissing dolphins and stuff. But I mean, the Hornets disappointed me. But it's whatever.
Shirt open, kissing dolphins.
Shirt open, man. All my taco meat out.
19 days, fanny pack, all that. Hey, the Hornets can't do it, but live your best life.
Live your best life. Hey man, I disconnected a couple weeks back.
But let's get to it.
Okay.
And for those of you listening, for those of you watching, this episode would be mostly Hornets. We got a lot to talk about, and let's get to it. Let's get to it.
All right. So it was the end of our coach's first year, James Borrego. How would you rate his performance this year, and how do you see him projecting going forward?
As far as this year, it's a very mixed bag for me. I've been consistent with my criticism of JB, mainly right in the meat in the middle of the season when we were really, really struggling. But the more and more I think about how and why I criticize JB, I'm kind of softening my stance a little bit because when I think about it, needless to say, this roster had inconsistencies and problems. Mm-hmm. And, me and Vince talked a lot about how the rotations were never really set. Me and you said he threw a lot of crap at the wall to see what stuck. But the more and more I thought about it, it was like, well, when you have a roster like that where there's not a lot of two-way players on our roster.
True. That
creates those kind of problems where you have to do that. You have to be inconsistent depending on matchup.
Gotcha.
There were, we had a season where Frank Kaminsky had a good 2-3 month span where he didn't play.
Yeah.
And then ended up being one of our most important players at the end of the season. What other NBA team functions like that? I'm not even saying that's really a good or a bad thing. So I say all that to say, if I'm saying it's a total mixed bag, I have to give him a solid C.
Gotcha.
But it's kind of grading on the curve just with the roster that he had to work.
Gotcha, Vince.
And I'm going to kind of co-sign with Jamal, but I'm going to take it in a different direction. I don't know if I can give Borrego a legitimate grade because he's a rookie. It's his first year. Because, like, when you go to the college ranks, especially in college football, you typically give a coach 3 to 4 years before you say, okay, good or bad, because it takes a while for him to get all the players out from the old regime, to get his players in there so that fit his style of play and all that good stuff. With Borrego being a more offensive-minded coach, he took over a team who previously was more of a defensive-oriented coach team. With that being said, my stance from day one has always been, if Borrego took this team and he improved on what happened last year, then I feel like Rich Cho would have been vindicated. But if he took this team and he did worse, then I think it vindicates Steve Clifford. So the season is over. We had a 3-game improvement, and I honestly don't think one of those guys are vindicated over the other. And I say that because Rich Cho is vindicated because we had the 3-game improvement. So Rich Cho brought the players in here, so obviously they can win. However, I think Cliff is vindicated as well because even though we only had a 3-game improvement, we still missed the playoffs. There were a lot of games where we had the game in bag, had the game in hand, and we lost it. And that was too familiar last season. Yeah. And when this happened last year, Cliff took all the blame.
Gotcha.
He took all the blame.
For me, I give him a solid C minus. Honestly, I was a big proponent of Steve Clifford. I think he should have remained the coach. We never gave him a talented roster, in my opinion.
Now, sorry to cut you off. I've been a huge Cliff supporter, but I do think he needed to leave. And even though he didn't have the full support of the organization, even though he didn't have control with the players that he brought in, I think his coaching habits was too old school and he was too rigid. He was not willing to adjust to the new NBA.
Let me say this. Right before Steve Clifford got fired, I told a lot of people I was very indifferent to Steve Clifford. I would have been fine if he would have stayed. Mm-hmm. I was fine when he left. But boy, is he vindicated.
Oh, hell yeah, he is hella vindicated.
Lord have mercy. This weekend didn't vindicate him. I don't know what did.
Oh, he is
Lord
hella
have mercy.
Vindicated. Yeah.
Come on. Number one, you beat your old team for a game that we need to get in playoffs, even though it didn't matter. Okay. Number two, you still a road game against the number 2 seed, the Toronto Raptors, with former Bobcat DJ Augustine, former Hornet Michael Carter-Williams, and Steve Clifford being the former Hornets coach. If that doesn't vindicate him, I don't know what does. But let me get to my last point. We had another coach here in Charlotte by the name of Larry Brown. Larry Brown is a fantastic coach, in my opinion. He's a Hall of Fame fantastic coach. Everywhere he goes, it is an immediate improvement of the team that he's coaching. However, there's always a point with Larry Brown where it's like, okay, you've done your job, but you have worn on your players. Yeah. They're not listening anymore. It's time to go. I bring it up because that may be very well what has happened with Steve Clifford. And
I will agree with that.
It's possible. I'm not an insider. I don't know, but it's very. This is why I say that. I followed a lot of Steve Clifford's post-game interviews, and toward the end of his last season, he sounded exasperated. Like, I don't know what else I can tell these guys. We work on the same things every day. We know what we're supposed to do. We know what we can do, but we're not doing it. When you get to that point, it's time to leave.
See, my issue was we were on track for a worse record until we played those new guys. And so if Borrego would have finished with an identical record as Clifford, maybe it was just those players' problem. So the younger guys were more hungry and more receptive to new ears. Right. So you put Clifford with those new guys, you got a better roster. I think if Clifford was the coach, we'd make the playoffs.
I don't think so.
Let me tell you why. Clifford loved Bacon. Last year, Clifford was quoted saying, Bacon is a starter in this league. Bacon would have more opportunity to play this year. Miles plays defense. Miles would have played this year.
And see,
Graham came in ready. The only reason why Tony Parker came here is because Borrego and Batum.
Right.
Graham would have been the backup.
It's hard for me to co-sign on that.
And Frank Kaminsky would have played more.
It's hard for me to co-sign on all of that because Graham barely played. Not Graham, but Bacon barely got any run last year. Even though he was a rookie, he was still bouncing back and forth to the G League. And one thing I would never understand is how you go to the G League and you dropping 40 points a night, and then you come back up, and then you sit on the bench for 2 weeks. Like, right. I never understood that.
And that's something I'm completely with you on that. Now, within this fan base, there's always these arguments about how come my favorite guy doesn't play? Why come? And we go back and forth about certain guys, not going to say any names, about how come this guy doesn't play. With Dwayne Bacon, it's something that's never been understood. It's something I just never got.
And to get to my point I was trying to make earlier, that's why I think Cliff needed to get fired. Because had he stayed here, I don't think he makes any coaching adjustments. When he went to Orlando, when he got fired, before he went to Orlando, I think he did some self-reflection. Like, you know what? Maybe I need to change some of the things that I do. And he did that in Orlando.
See, I would disagree there because if you look at his 2 playoff appearances, there were 2 totally different teams. That first team with Al Jefferson was a grinded out defensive team. That second iteration of the playoff team was a straight pace and space, spread your guys out. They were a deep team. Clifford had a top 7 offense. So it's like you give him the players, he's able to adjust. Maybe it was a player problem and a personnel problem upstairs with Cho, rather than Cliff. Right. But I understand what you guys saying. The message can wear on people.
Yeah, and again, we'll never know. We're not insiders. We'll never know. But I think that when he went to Orlando, I would like to believe that he told the Magic management, "Look, I need more player control. Gotcha. I need to have more say so." Right. And keep in mind, the Magic were picked to win 26, 27, 28 games this year. Their roster was completely laughed at going into the season.
That is true.
And they didn't squeak into the playoffs as an 8 seed.
Right.
They didn't get into the playoffs on the final game on the final night of the season. They solidified their spot in the playoffs about a week or two before the season ended.
And they beat good teams that last couple
they
of weeks
beat
too.
And
great
they won
teams.
the division.
Yeah.
They beat great teams.
Yeah.
And now they're game planning for a game 2 in Philly. In Toronto, up 1-0.
Yeah.
Now,
Good place to be in.
Now, last week we actually talked about who would we rather the Hornets play had they made the playoffs, and I said I didn't want them to play Toronto because of how the regular season went.
Yes.
So Toronto, if I remember right, they went 3-1 versus Orlando this season.
They did.
And it is hard, even though they're a 2 seed right now, it is hard to continuously beat teams like that. And I think Orlando has just seen enough of them. You got DJ Augustine just like, did y'all watch the game? Look,
hey, man.
Augustine was doing stuff I ain't seen before.
DJ looks like Kyle Lowry. We're not gonna go.
Let me say this, man. And with DJ Augustine, like I'm not gonna sit here and tell people like, man, DJ was like the worst thing in the world when he played here. He's always been pretty talented.
Agreed.
And as horrible as that season that I hate mentioning, 759, he was like at least the lead scorer for that team. So it's like there's some considerable talent there.
Yeah, I agree.
However, as far as this playoff series is concerned, I really do believe it's lightning in the bottle. I think he'll come back down to earth. I really do. I don't think he's a bad point guard to begin with, but this Kobe Bryant killing Mamba dude I saw this weekend, I don't know if we're going to see a repeat performance of that. Because I was watching it like, DJ who? Like, who is this dude, man? But, all I got to say, man, it was really great seeing Michael Carter-Williams and DJ Augustine and Steve Clifford win the playoff game.
Okay, so
I'm not even going to touch that. That's another 15.
Let's just move over.
Let's move on.
So, in your eyes, was this season a failure or a success? We were projected to win about 37, 38 games this year. Was it a success or a failure to you?
Actually, I can't remember the author, but there was a NBA preseason predictor on all the teams that came out last year. I can't remember. I think it was Bleacher Report, and whoever wrote the article, he actually predicted that Charlotte would go 39-43. He actually predicted that.
Wow.
So, and I shouted him out on Twitter, basically saying he needs a pay raise. And I get it. There's like 30-some odd teams in the league, but he picked the right record for sure. So, like, hey, there's somebody out there who knows what he's doing. I know this will conflict with my answer about not giving JB a grade, but I'm going to call this season a failure. Because when the season started, if you go back and if you watch those summer league games with the young core, I had this team possibly being a 5 or a 6 seed. And we saw the way that this team looked the last couple weeks of the season. I've been screaming, as well as a few others, since November that those young guys needed to play. Mm-hmm. Imagine what's happening if those guys were able to play. Look at all of the games that we lost. We were 1-12 at one point in games where Tony Parker did not play.
Yeah.
And even with that, Graham still wasn't getting those minutes. He was running Kemba into the ground.
Right,
So imagine if Graham gets those minutes. Imagine if Bacon starts getting those minutes. And I'm not gonna hop on the Frank Kaminsky train. Like he played lights out towards the end of the season. Right. But we've been watching Frank for 4 years now, and we know that when we expect less of Frank, he gives us everything.
He gives us more. Right.
But as soon as we start expecting it, it's gone. It's gone. So like, I'm not gonna get on the. I'm not like I appreciate it. Like it was dope that with everything that he went through this season, he was able to remain professional enough to go out there and still contribute the way he did. So, excuse me, much respect there. But those other young guys, if they get more playing time, when Nick Batum and Marvin Williams are giving us goose eggs 2 out of 3 games, just imagine like. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here. So I'm calling the season a failure.
The season is an absolute failure. But the thing about it is, yes, this season is a failure, but there is more of a bright side.
Agreed.
I know that might be like hard for a lot of Hornets fans to really accept or really agree with, being that we have this big Kemba situation going. I get that.
Explain, man.
But the bright side to this is Dwayne Bacon. It is Devontae Graham. It is Miles Bridges. Maybe Malik Monk. Hopefully Malik Monk. We'll see.
Prayerfully Malik Monk.
And the reason why I do say it's a failure, and I hate going backwards, but I feel like I have to go backwards to explain why it is the way it is, man. This is the 3rd straight season, man. Here we are again. I don't know about anybody else, man. I'm tired of not being in the playoffs, man. With somebody like a Kemba Walker, I'm tired of him not having considerable help. I'm tired of fighting for that 8 seed every year. We're here again.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be here again for the 3rd straight. And it's almost like Groundhog's Day. It's almost like the same way every year.
Right. Now, here's the difference with that. In years past, you're feeling like that because we're the Hornets. Yeah. But at the same time, I said this last week, and I think a few other people have co-signed. We actually feel good about the future.
Right.
We actually so like that. That's kind of like my saving grace right there. Because when's the last time have we had a 2nd round pick, much less in back-to-back seasons, get drafted, and we're actually talking about this person being a part of the future?
But and then on top of that, we actually have a draft and stash guy who we're not even talking about, who has looked pretty doggone good over there, man. So we don't know if and when we're going to bring him by. That's another reason to also give us hope as well. I wish I could pronounce his name, but we all know what I'm talking about. Whatever the guy's name. That's so bad, but whatever. But again, man, like, not to say that our roster was like top 3 or 4 roster. Not to say like, man, this is the year we're going to contend for anything. Let's be clear about that. That's not what the expectation was. However, my expectations were a little higher because we had this breath of fresh air, so to speak, in James Borrego, who was bringing a new style of offense. He had new, fresh ideas. We thought we were going to see more than young guys. We thought. But lo and behold, December, January, we struggle again. When we get to the meat of the season, when it's most important to win games, we drop the ball again. We lose close games with teams we're supposed to beat again. And it's more because of what you mentioned. We're getting goose eggs from the veterans. And before we move on to the next thing, man, let me say this if nobody else has said this, man. And I'm only saying this more so related to salary with Cody and MKG. More so related to salary. But that for Cody, MKG, Marvin, Nick, if there was a way to get 4 of those guys out and bring something new in, I'd do it in a heartbeat. Yeah. More so relative to salary with more so with Cody and MKG, though.
To me, I didn't have to make it in the playoffs. I just didn't see the roster making the playoffs,
and that's more than fair. Yeah, that's.
I mean, they didn't have a top 6 roster to me. Like I looked at Brooklyn, I said they were better. They're a better team. Detroit, pretty much on the same level. I didn't even think about Orlando.
Right.
I was thinking Washington.
I don't think anybody thought about
it.
I was thinking Washington would compete with the Hornets for that 8th seed. And so
No, I'm gonna call you out. You had Washington as a top 4 seed. Yeah, Washington. I'm gonna go find. You had Washington as a top 4 seed.
No. I don't think I did.
I will go find.
Hey man, pull it up. We gotta move it later.
All right, we got y'all next episode. Right?
But I mean, to me, the season is about. The season is even to me. I mean, I see it as kind of a success in a way. I mean, we didn't go 36-46.
Yeah.
A week before the season was over, in the past 2 years, we were eliminated. We fought to the final day. So to me, this is the season is a success.
Okay.
But my issue was with Borrego. Borrego was supposed to be this player development coach, and you sit here and you're letting Nick Batum start most of the year.
Yeah.
He's giving you nothing. Marvin is giving you nothing. Marvin is a bench player these days. Marvin's giving you nothing. And the front office kind of let me down as well.